It is 7:12 p.m. We have a quorum and this meeting has been duly posted. Good evening, and welcome to the monthly board meeting of the Dallas Independent School District Board of Trustees. Will you please stand and join us for a moment of silence and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a salute to the Texas flag. The following trustees are present. District 1, Trustee Flores. District 2, Trustee Marshall. District 3, Trustee Mitchkay. District 5, Trustee Johnson is joining us virtually. District 6, Trustee Foreman. District 7, Trustee Mackey. District 8, Trustee Solis. District 9, myself, Justin Henry. Our Superintendent of Schools, Michael Hernandez, joins us. This meeting will be available simultaneously in Spanish on social media through Dallas ISD in Espanol, on Facebook, and through the district's website. Trustee Flores, could you do us pick the worst time? Sorry.
Where's my script? Si hay alguien que esta junta se va a transmitir simultáneamente en español. Gracias.
Gracias. On March 16th, Governor Abbott granted a request by Attorney General Ken Paxton to temporarily suspend a limited number of open meetings laws to the extent necessary to allow telephonic and video conference meetings in response to the coronavirus. In accordance with those suspended rules, we certify the following. A, notice of this meeting has been posted online for at least 72 hours. Although members of the board are not gathered in a central physical location, we do have a quorum in attendance at this meeting by video conference. We are meeting by the use of Zoom meeting software for those that are online. The rest of us are in person. This allows for two-way communication for members of the public. As we would do at any in-person meeting, members of the public who have followed the instructions on the meeting notice for registering to speak during public comment portion will be unmuted for 3 minutes to speak. If you would like to provide comment at a future meeting conducted by video conference, please follow instructions on the meeting notice. All other meeting procedures will adhere to board-adopted procedures to the extent practicable. An audio recording of this meeting is being made and will be available to the public. We apologize in advance for any unforeseeable difficulties and ask for your patience as we navigate unprecedented conditions. If you have questions about these suspended laws, please call the Office of the Attorney General at 888-672-6787 or by email at toma@oag.texas.gov. I don't think we have any elected officials in the room. Trustees, there are no recognitions. Before we move into the meeting with reports in the public forum, we do have a closed session. We anticipate the closed session will be roughly 15 minutes, and then we will return to this room. It is now 7:15 p.m., and we are in closed session. So I'm going to back up. Forgive me, I need to read this part. The board will retire to closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551 concerning any and all purposes permitted by the Act, including but not limited to the following sections. Texas Government Code Section 551.071 for private consultation with its attorney about pending or contemplated litigation or on a matter in which the duty of the attorney to the governmental body under the Texas Disciplinary Rules of Professional Conduct of the State Bar of Texas clearly conflicts with this chapter, including ongoing procurement compliance review update. The time is now 7:16 p.m. and we are in closed session. The time is now 8:14 p.m. and we are back in open session. We'll continue with our agenda, starting with item 3 reports. We'll start with the superintendent's report. Dr. Hinojosa.
Yes, board members, I have 4 items, a little bit unusual that I'll take a little bit of time on these 4 items. 3 of them will be very quick. The first item is that you're going to be getting an email from staff. We have put together a COVID dashboard, and before it goes prime to the public, we're going to be getting that in the email today. And it's a dashboard that will allow you to see where the active COVID cases are. If you need some support, Sherry Christian and Jack Kalanick can help you. It's very intuitive dashboard. You should be able to handle it by yourself. But if you need some assistance with this dashboard that you're about to get, please work with either Jack Kalanick or Sherry Christian. On the second item, very quickly, we also, if someone will pull up the dashboard on construction, one of the things that we want to do better is have a lot more transparency in how we manage our construction projects. As Dr. Lear brings up, this is a dashboard. We are modeling this dashboard after Houston ISD. Houston ISD may not be doing a lot of things great right now, but they are doing this very well. And we've noticed their dashboard, and it does a great job of keeping their public, their stakeholders informed on projects. This is an example of one of the ones that we're going to be putting together and that'll be active pretty soon. The next slide, I'll just show you the projects where they are color-coded and kind of where we're doing on the schedule. And then the third slide will actually show the individual schools with the pictures and actual information. So this one will go active in the near future, and so it's our commitment as we finish up the 2015 bond that we get you more up to date with where we are with our construction projects. And then depending on what happens in the future, we want to continue to follow that model. The third item I have to report on is an enrollment. Things are getting better by the day. One of the things that we have resolved is that we're at 7%, but it's getting closer to 6%, and our staff has done a phenomenal job to try to find our students. We're not in this boat by ourselves. What we have discovered is that nationally, it's slightly less of a problem, even in urban districts, where they may be losing 3 to 4% of their students. This is a significant problem for the entire state of Texas, both urban and suburban. There are some suburban districts that have a higher percentage than us, like Houston and El Paso. We even have some suburbs in the metro area, like Richardson, that's at 5%. And Dallas County is down. Every school district in Dallas County is down. And so this is a new phenomenon that we're still analyzing. But I do want to thank our folks for making this a significant priority. We're over 142,000. We're closing the gap, and as has been well chronicled, our biggest delta is at high school. We're down less than 2% or around 2%. At pre-K, it's 33%. But there are districts that are even much higher than 33% of their pre-K students missing. So we're making progress on this. We will keep you informed. But we're also different from other districts is that we have a healthy reserve. As you'll see a budget amendment tonight that will show that we can withstand kind of where we are with the financing, and as we project when the audits come out in the end, we'll show that we are going to be able to withstand some kind of issues. But also we are working with state officials. Right now the state has only granted us a 12-week reprieve on enrollment and attendance, and we're going to several superintendents have met with state leadership to request an extension of that 12-week. We don't want to promise you anything, but at least we are having engaging conversations. The last item that I will be brief on is something we've started working on that we have to get adopted tonight. Board President Justin Henry aptly said that if we get our legislative priorities done quickly, we can actually get this to impact get this information in front of some of the candidates for office right now. What we did is we took the ideas that the board generated, and we took the ideas that the senior staff generated, and we combined them. Some of you will notice that we took some of the ideas and we combined concepts that were similar so that we don't dilute the voting. We listed all of the board members' ideas up there, and then we added ours. We collapsed a couple of ours because we actually like yours better. So I don't want to belabor the point, but you see them listed up there, A through J. These are the ones that have survived the previous cuts. And so all we need to do now is see if there's any clarifying questions. If not, then we'll send the index cards around, and the senior staff will be voting on this as well. Since we all came up with this, we have the index cards at your place. But before we take your index cards and ask you to put your ratings on there, are there any questions of clarification on process?
Superintendent, our Zooming trustees, I sent this to them so they can pull it up.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Any, yes,
You got it, sorry.
Trustee Flores?
So how many are we voting on? I'm sorry, I missed that part.
You're going to get 5 choices. You can get 5 choices. Trustee Mack, yeah.
One quick clarifying question on full funding for pre-K. Is that referring to anything in particular? Are we talking pre-K 3, pre-K 4, making it explicit, or is it the whole everything?
There is no, when we had that conversation, that was a board-generated item. There was no detail given on that other than that conceptually, right now we get half funding, and really we want the full funding for it.
Thank you.
Any trustees that are virtual, do any of you have any questions? Okay, Trustee Marshall.
Is E intended to say repeal or modify, or is it one or the other?
No, it's intended to say some board members want a repeal, some want a modification, some want nothing maybe. So it was, the staff came up with repeal because we don't think it'll get, the staff came up with modify because we don't think they'll ever do away with it. So we'd like to tweak it because right now, if you're high poverty, well, let me put it this way, if you have 20% economically disadvantaged or less, none of those schools have Fs or Ds. So we think that it's unfair, so we think it needs to be modified. The trustees that put it up there, they just don't believe in A through F, and they just wanted to get rid of it. Now, ours, we'd like to get rid of it, but we don't think that's ever going to happen, so we'd like to modify the unfairness of it. So that's why we combined the two, because we didn't want to dilute the vote.
But if you're going to vote, it has to be. Are you scratching out repeal then, and we're voting on it to say modify?
No, if somebody wants to separate the two, we can separate the two, but we thought we would try to get it on the priorities, and we compromised and put it on there. But if the board doesn't think that's fair, then we can certainly amend the language. Trustee HK?
Yeah, just as a point of order, are we moving over to 7.01 of the agenda to work on this right now, or are you just setting this up for
just
later?
setting it up for later? We'll vote on, see what the results are.
Okay.
We'll vote on that later. We're just getting everybody's input right now. There's no vote right now. We're just getting everybody's input.
And just again on the process question, are we doing what we did the last time, assigning disproportionate weights to the 5 priorities that we pick?
Yes.
Okay.
So-
and what are those weights again?
Okay. Okay, those weights are 15, 10, 8, 5, and 3. 15, 10, 8, 5, and 3. Any other questions before we ask you to fill out your card? Okay, looks like you're filling out your card. Dr. Lear, is Dr. Wilson here? Whenever your cards are finished, if y'all will start collecting them. And Dwayne, since Alan King left, you need to audit our numbers and our adding. No more than 15 points on your first one. Once we get all the cards, President Henry, we can move on because they'll just tabulate them and then we'll discuss this again when we vote on that other item. So we'll let the staff tabulate these.
Got it. Trustees, we're moving on to 3.02, Board of Trustee Committee Reports. Are there any committee reports? I have Trustee Flores and Trustee Michkay.
Very quickly, Trustee Henry, we had an audit committee this last week, and we approved a number of the reports. We went and oversaw the changes to the financials, which are in the board meeting tonight, and we also looked at the budget in terms of hours for different types of projects, and received reports from Internal Audit Chief Alan King on some changes and modifications. He's hired some consultants to help, in particular with the construction type auditing work, and in particular with the CMAR. And we're going to have a pretty exhaustive and deep oversight over any of those projects through the internal audit function. And he's hired and brought on board the people that can help make that happen. So very glad and very receptive to that. And then we reviewed a couple reports for which there's going to be follow-up around maintenance and operations. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Flores. Trustee Michkay.
Yes, I just wanted to give a brief summary of the Superintendent Evaluations Committee meeting that we had on Wednesday, September 16th. Present at that meeting were Trustees Garcia and Mackey and myself. This was very preliminary, but we did realize that the superintendent evaluation instrument that we had been using for the last several years has about 25 data points, and only about 8 of them are going to be available for the evaluation of the prior school year, the superintendent's performance. And we discussed whether or not to do a pause in terms of using that evaluation instrument, or to use the criteria that we currently are able to obtain. At this point, we didn't make any decisions, but that was what our discussion was about. And then on a going forward basis, if we use the instrument, we were looking at the possibility of making sure that the numbers in the pause year would be appropriately adjusted. And then one thing that I wanted to bring up that I did not bring up, but I wanted to give a heads up to not only the committee members and the other trustees as well as the administration, is the possibility of adding something to the instrument that we will be using for the upcoming year, related to customer service issues. Things like work orders, are they processed timely? Buses, are they running on time? Calls, are they being answered on time? We'll have to work with the administration to come up with metrics that are fair and reasonable. But I do think that this would give voice to an issue that we hear a lot from our stakeholders, that we need to improve customer service. I know there are initiatives underway. I'm very pleased with what I've seen from David Bates and his team, but we do want to have the kinds of improvements in customer service that we have seen in academic gains and in financial management and in the confidence that stakeholders have in the district. Those have been phenomenal gains. I don't know if we've seen that kind of those kinds of gains in what I've generally described here as customer service. So I'm going to ask the committee members, the administration, and other board members who are interested to think about ways we can appropriately measure that, making sure that we can use both subjective and objective data, and then also thinking about what percentage of the evaluation should be devoted to that. There will be another meeting in October. The meeting will be posted, and that is all I have at this point. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Trustee Mitchke. We're going to move on to trustee reports for Districts 1 through 9. We'll just start with District 1 and circulate all the way through District 9. So starting with Trustee Flores.
Thank you, President Henry. There's a special mention out to Thomas Jefferson High School's men's soccer team, a Dallas Morning News photo story from last year highlighting the team's immigrant student athletes, is a finalist for the 2020 Online Journalism Award in the Sports Medium, Small Medium Newsroom category. We will be expecting the final results next month. Congratulations. Kudos to Ms. Catherine Southwick, a teacher at Kramer Elementary School, who has been using pallets to spruce up her garden and inspire students to enjoy nature, grow vegetables, and learn the importance of healthy eating. This has inspired principals from other Dallas ISD schools to consider similar projects for their campuses, and I've been to the gardens several times, and they're pretty fantastic. And finally, I want to thank all the members of the community, the families, the staff, and all the principals that attended the District 1 fireside chat, return to school fireside chat I did last week. I want to thank Dr. Lusk, who's my board liaison, for putting together the team that participated and all the chiefs that were there for the call. I think that the information we provided was very, very timely, especially as we had, just modified the plan for going back to school, and there were a lot of questions about that and connectivity and other things. So I really want to thank all the families that participated and also the staff for being there. We really appreciate all of you guys being available for that. So thank you very much. That's my report, President Henry.
Thank you, Trustee Flores. Trustee Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll give the District 2 report. First, a big thank you to City Council Representatives David Blewett and Paula Blackman for supporting our DISD students with a back-to-school supply drive. We really appreciate that. Also want to share that Lipscomb Elementary School has created a virtual library as an additional tool to help parents and students continue learning at home. It's really cool, so I'm proud of the team there. I also want to congratulate Steve De La Cerda, the baseball coach at North Dallas High School, who has produced a podcast titled The Dugout with assistant coach Elijah Perez. The podcast shares insights, storytelling, and positive information. Great idea. Also, on September 1st, Dandy Rogers received a generous school supply donation from the Northridge Presbyterian Church, so thank you very much for your support. Also, on September 11th, 15 Dallas ISD students were among 16,000 semifinalists in the annual National Merit Scholarship Program. This award aims to recognize the nation's scholastic champions and encourage the pursuit of academic excellence. And I want to extend a particular congratulations and good luck to Woodrow's own Cole Broberg, who is among those semifinalists. And lastly, I want to recognize North Dallas High School's football coach, Bobby Estes, who was featured in a report from NBC News on the topic of navigating schools in Texas. So congrats on your recognition, Coach. That concludes the District 2 report.
Yes, for District 3, I wanted to say that I'm happy to see that the improvements to Bryan Adams High School through the 2015 bond program have started. Actually, what we've seen so far is the demolition, but the artist renditions of what it's going to look like when it's finished are really very encouraging, and all of East Dallas can't wait to see how the high school will be transformed to better serve our students for years to come. I'd also like to congratulate the District 3 teachers who received several $1,000s for great projects through the Junior League grants for innovative teaching. These teachers include Mona Lisa Chada from Emmett J. Conrad High School, Aliana Sang and Shelley Thibodeau from Robert T. Hill Middle School, and Angela Miller from George Truett Elementary School. Thank you, Mr. President. That concludes my report.
Now for the District 4 reports, President Henry. Happy to share that John Quincy Adams Elementary School distributed food donations to Dallas ISD parents on Friday, September the 18th. Members of the Pleasant Grove Christian Church helped coordinate that donation, and Adams Elementary staff members helped parents complete the survey for the return to school. Ms. Jessica Brevard, a second grade teacher at Blanton Elementary, is using social media to inspire families and to encourage reading. Since school buildings closed in March, she has used Instagram account to share diverse book recommendations with her students and families. She has now more than 4,000 followers. Sure, heck a lot more than I do. Nathaniel Hawthorne Elementary School is partnering with Girl Scouts of Northeast Texas to offer an after-school program. And the program is for girls in kindergarten to 5th grade and will take place 1 day a week. I'd also like to recognize Ms. Alejandra Ramos at Walnut Hill Elementary for kicking off Hispanic Heritage Month with a very powerful performance celebrating the bilingual and bicultural expression and exploration of our students in Dallas ISD. And as a proud daughter of Mexican immigrants myself from San Luis de la Paz, Guanajuato, Mexico, Feliz Mes de la Herencia Hispana. And also super excited and with great pride share the announcement that 3 Dallas ISD schools, including one of my very own, Edward Teich Elementary, was awarded the National Blue Ribbon School Award. As a former Edward Teich Tiger myself, this could not come at a greater time to just showcase the excellence of our students in Pleasant Grove and of our community at large. So thank you very much for everyone involved in that immense transformation here in Dallas ISD and locally. Thank you.
Mr. President, with your permission, I'd like to add to my notes because Trustee Garcia reminded me the Blue Ribbon Awards came out today, and District 2's Longfellow is also a recipient. So I want to give them a public shout out and apologies for not acknowledging that earlier. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Johnson. I think he's joined us online for your District 5 accolades.
Thank you, Trustee. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Trustee Henry, Dr. Hinojosa, this is my accolades. This is not the list that I was given. I've asked the administration privately not to place principals on my list that they've lied to me about and lied to my community about how they snuck principals in my school and in my district without notifying me or having my community panel and representative to be on the panel to serve. So therefore, since I've asked privately, I've been disregarded. I'm making it publicly known that I do not play those games and I do not like that kind of action being as a trustee and a disrespect to my community. So therefore, I have created a list to congratulate certain ones in District 5. I want to give congratulations to Rashad Jackson, the principal, also Dr. Johnson at South Oak Cliff High School, Mr. Tyson over at Roosevelt, Mr. Brooks, principal at Pinkston, new principal, Mr. Bobby Nevels over at Sarah Zunwalk, a new principal over at Kennedy Carey, Shadaria Foster, Mr. Campbell, the principal at Wilma Hutchins High School, Mr. Turner, new principal at Eddie Bernice Johnson Elementary School, which was promised to be a STEM-focused school only, not an ACE school. I also want to thank them and other principals that are working hard. The executive director, Ms. Tracy Washington, for the hard work that they are doing, and the parents and the community of District 5 that's working together to make sure that kids and parents and teachers know what's going on. Principals are working very hard. These names that I've named, I personally have spoke with them, and I know the hard work they're doing. So thank you for working hard during this pandemic and making things seem easy, although I know it is not easy. You are doing a great job, and I want to give you kudos for all the hard work that you are doing. And I ask administration, do not sneak names on my list that have not been vetted and you have not been totally honest to me as a trustee and have not been honest to my community. I'm going to call those things out because I've asked privately, and Jolie Healy and her team are still doing the same thing. Thank you.
Hey, Trustee Johnson, Trustee Foreman.
Good evening. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the parents, the students, the faculty, and the administration as we move through this pandemic and try to figure out what's best for our children. And I'm really appreciative. Next, I'd like to just say that we had a drive-by celebration by SAGE, which is Seniors Actively Guiding Education, to honor the naming of the Charmaine and Robert Price Career Institute in Dallas. It's at the Old Village Fair. And we are so happy and honored to be a part of that and grateful for all of the participation that took place on Sunday. And I'd also like to thank the ladies of the Dallas Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, who sponsored the Delta Legal Clinic last night. The clinic addressed legal issues related to the anticipated increase in evictions and foreclosures in the Dallas community and across the county caused by the ongoing pandemic. And just like to end it with a shout out to my 3 high school principals, which are all Smith, Jonathan Smith, Llewellyn Smith, and Gail Smith. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Foreman.
All right, for District 7, I'd like to congratulate Sunset High School cheerleaders Jordan Hawkins, Mario Garcia, Alexis Rodriguez, and Frederick James Jr. for making the NCAA All-American team. Congratulations to all of you for your incredible hard work and dedication. In addition, I want to send a special shout-out to their coach, Natasha Mitchell, for helping make Sunset athletic history and continuing to push her team through virtual practices for this huge accomplishment. Well done. Also, kudos to Luis Macias, a teacher at Trini Garza Early College High School, for garnering media coverage with WFAA and NBC5 to help highlight the Mexican American Studies course in celebration of this month's Hispanic Heritage Month. Thank you for sharing the importance of this course and continuing to teach our students about Hispanic culture. And finally, I'd like to shout out Adamson student Vanessa Martinez, who was selected to be part of IBM's Voices of P-TECH campaign. Congratulations, Vanessa.
Thank you, Trustee Mackey. Trustee Solis.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to first give kudos to the Solar Prep community, which raised more than $65,000 on North Texas Giving Day in support of both Solar Prep boys and Solar Prep girls. And then I'd also like to give a congratulations to teacher in District 8, Mr. Eric Hill from Burnett Elementary, who was selected as one of the 6 finalists for the 2021 Texas Teacher of the Year. Mr. Hill's outstanding and creative work in the classroom continues to serve as an inspiration to many. For those that are interested in knowing the results, the Texas Teacher of the Year will be announced on September the 30th. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Trustee Solis. I'll begin the District 9 board meeting accolades. As we prepare to open the doors to most of our students, and some of our students have already visited our campuses, I just want to thank all the staff, the administrators, and the educators for what you're doing to work with parents to make sure reentry can go as smooth as possible in a very difficult and unprecedented time. I've spoken and visited and been on PTA and SPDM calls with many of them, and I know there's a lot of changes that come from the county numbers and decisions made by this board and the administration. I know that it rolls down to the campus level, and you're trying to leverage that or bridge that between those decisions in the community that you love and serve. So I really appreciate your diligence and flexibility in dealing with this, and our educators for what you're doing for our kids virtually right now. I also want to urge everyone in that space to demonstrate a little bit of patience and grace as we work together through challenging times. This is not going to be perfect. It is novel, and I think everyone is trying their best, and hope that people keep that in mind when they are having discussions or disagreements. With that being said, I also want to congratulate 2 District 9 educators who are receiving Junior League grants for innovative teaching to fund projects to excite their children about learning. I want to give a kudos to Megan Vance at Harold Lang Senior Middle School and Sherry Feder at Mata Montessori, who are among 40 teachers that will receive this grant from the Junior League. I also want to give kudos, sticking to the same thing, to the coaches and the athletic directors and students who've opted in to begin conditioning and athletic competitions. I know we have some scrimmages today. Work hard, but, stay safe. That is a priority. And know that you have our support and the community support. I want to thank folks that are working out in the community. I'm going to name some specifically. I know St. Luke Community United Methodist Church, the South Dallas Fair Park Faith Coalition, and Bridge Builders have donated backpacks of all kind of school supplies. They've reached out to our educators specifically and asked them what they need, and then turned around and delivered those specific needs. So I couldn't name all the groups that are working in our communities right now in these unprecedented times, but I really think it's showing the best of all of us for what you're all doing for our community. I want to acknowledge also, I want to join in what some of my colleagues have said to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month. We are one community, and we want to honor the Hispanic community for its historic and present-day contributions to our city, our county, our society, and the world. And I want to end on a note, just a reminder to everyone that make sure I get the date right, so the Dallas 2020 census continues, and September 30th is the deadline. We only have 6 days, so if you have not completed your census, I ask that you please complete your census, and that will conclude the District 9 report. Our agenda now calls for the public forum segment of our meeting. Ms. Grant, will you please call the speakers?
Our first speaker is Trustee Joyce Foreman.
Thank you. Our children, our community, our money. The oath of office that we take as trustees state, I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office of School Board Trustee for the Dallas Independent School District of the state of Texas, and will be, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, defend the Constitution and laws of the United States. So help me God. At the last board meeting, I spoke about my frustration regarding other trustees providing a second so that items could be pulled from the consent agenda. This gives trustees an opportunity to have additional discussion regarding a particular item, and that also gives the opportunity to vote on the item separately from the consent agenda. Thanks to the trustees who had additional questions this week and helped pull some of those items for additional discussion. I do appreciate you. This board should not be a rubber stamp for the administration and should question the expenditures of taxpayer money to the best of their ability at all times. We are charged with that specific duty as trustees. Over the years, we have consistently approved multi-year contracts for millions of dollars where any vendor who submits a response to the inquiry is automatically added to the list without real justification. At the last board briefing, I specifically asked questions of the technology department about an MOU that allowed Dallas ISD to send up to 500 computers to Richardson ISD for their use. During the discussion with the technology professionals, one trustee decried that these were only dilapidated computers that we did not need. That didn't make sense. Richardson wouldn't want dilapidated computers. Another trustee said just because one trustee has a problem doesn't mean we all do. I think that's probably understood. After the board briefing, I've asked the administration 3 times for documentation to show that we loaned the computers and that we got them back. I still don't have that documentation. That is not good. It is very disappointing that Dallas ISD speaks about closing the gap and racial equity, but when there are opportunities to make a difference in reading, once again, we drop the ball. Reading academies were designed to address the needs of campuses that were in high need. The district identified those as high priority campuses. To my dismay, when the district assigned the reading academies and submitted to the state, they did not add some of the high priority campuses. That is troubling. There's no question that there are COVID expenses, but each time the administration brings expenditures of millions of dollars, there's no aggregate amount. I say all of this just to say,
Thank you. Your time has expired.
our children, our community, our money.
Our next speaker is Katrina Rasmussen. Ms. Rasmussen, you have 3 minutes to speak. Our next speaker is Kevin Hopper.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Hopper, voter in District 2, teacher in District 3. It is with heavy spirits that I address you today. Your employees are troubled. We're scared for our lives. Since returning to physical spaces, our employees have already been confronted with dozens of violations of safety protocols, inconsistent enforcement of masks and social distancing, and insufficient messaging from the district regarding the best safety practices that all campuses should be following. The safety guidelines the district has provided lack mechanisms of enforcement and err in the favor of campus autonomy to enforce or not enforce protocols that have been put in place to maximize the safety of staff and students. For example, what are the guidelines for mask wearing? Ask 5 employees at 5 different campuses and you'll get 5 different answers. What is the policy on bio clocks versus web clocks? Again, ask your employees and the answers will vary. As some administrators have implied to their employees that they must physically clock in every day, crowding into the same small space where social distancing is not possible, touching the same object over and over again, exposing office workers to everyone that works in the building. I would hope that our bosses actually cared about the safety and value of human lives, but this is not always the case. Furthermore, the guidelines and equipment provided by the district are inadequate. While I see you have posted things such as hand washing signs in student restrooms to instruct on proper hand washing procedures, our facilities are not equipped with hot water, paper towels, or sinks that will run 20 seconds unless you're physically touching the faucet, allowing you to only wash one hand at a time while contaminating the other with the dirty faucet that has been touched 100 times before you. Furthermore, I'd like to pass along a message from a nurse in the district. She says, if you could please mention that the nurses were all given KN95 masks with ear loops that do not properly seal, and you can tell air is coming from in the sides of the mask. Nurses have been instructed that these masks can be used when they are performing aerosolizing procedures such as breathing treatments. These masks are known in the scientific and medical communities to not be sufficient substitutions for N95 masks. Ask the district why, when they spent so much money on plexiglass, they have not made more of an effort to make sure that school nurses have real N95 masks. And if they are not going to make an effort to purchase N95 masks for nurses, then the nurses deserve an explanation why, and they deserve to be ethically informed that they are not properly protected from coronavirus, especially since N95 masks that the nurses did have in our clinics were confiscated during the spring and given to local hospitals. Now, in my own words, I certainly take advantage of the 4 additional weeks of remote learning available to us via the TEA waiver to allow more time for our schools to better prepare for what is ahead. And don't forget, there is a second wave coming.
Our next speaker is Lori Kirkpatrick.
Good evening. As you know, MAP testing is wrapping up tomorrow. We've spent 2 weeks of precious learning time administering a standardized test for the purpose of TEI, paying our teachers for standardized test scores. I want to read to you an excerpt from EdWeek Market Brief. It's dated September the 2nd, 2020. And before I do, I'll just remind you, Chris Minnick is the CEO of NWEA. NWEA is the maker of the MAP test. Here is Mr. Minnick on the MAP test. The data are not reliable for high-stakes purposes at this point. Furthermore, Minnick is recommending that it not be used at this time for any high-stakes decisions such as teacher evaluation. The CEO of the company making the MAP test says the test is not reliable for use in high-stakes teacher evaluations. Given this, I respectfully request a formal statement from the district justifying the use of MAP for high-stakes teacher evaluations and pay. I'm also concerned about the pressure being put on campus staff surrounding this high-stakes testing. In these past 2 weeks, campus staff have said it's mandatory that MAP be taken. You cannot opt out. They've refused to answer if MAP is being used for TEI teacher evaluations and have removed at least one individual from a community meeting with over 100 participants for speaking out against paying teachers for standardized test scores. Parents know MAP for the purpose of TEI is wrong. Yet it would seem the district is actively trying to deceive the taxpayers and humiliate parents for a purpose even the testing company CEO says is inappropriate. This is unacceptable. There are alternatives, meaningful, informative alternatives to engage in authentic learning and reinvigorate students, teachers, and the community. I hope you will begin to see the way. One such alternative is using pattern-based items. It was researched in Texas through the TEA with over 400,000 students participating. I'd be happy to share the research report with you. DISD, we can do so much better. Let's start together. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Elena Davis.
Good evening. I'm Elena Davis. As she said, I am a parent in District 2, and I have 3 elementary age children at Lakewood Elementary, the one and only elementary where our children are not going to be allowed to go full time. I have to say, I understand this is such a difficult time. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and I appreciate all of your efforts and time and energy in trying to do what's best for our city and our children. I have a few questions and I guess a few points I would like to talk about. My first question, so Lakewood has chosen a 5-day, half-day model, hybrid model. And my question to that is how in the about an hour and 20 minutes in between the 2 groups is everything going to be sanitized in a manner sufficient that the PM group who will be meeting at 12:20, will everything be cleaned in a way that is sufficient to kill anything that our sweet little AM group will have put on any of those desks and chairs and bathrooms and knobs and everything else? How is that going to be cleaned? Second, I would like to know, I understand that this is for the first grading period, and then will be will be adjusted to accordingly. My question is how or what number or what statistic is it that we're looking at so that all of our children can go full time? I know it's difficult. I understand that. And we're looking at safety and I get that too. But we're looking at the best interest for our children and their education, and full time every day is in their best interest. My last point is, this all stems down to Lakewood is overcrowded, and it has been for many years. And I know it's hard to rezone because there's an uproar from parents, but I urge you to please address this as soon as possible, because we wouldn't be in this predicament if it wasn't for that. Thank you for your time and efforts. Good night.
Our next speaker is Christina Childress.
Hello. Good evening. I'm a parent of 3 children in DISD, and I have many questions around the amount of information currently available to the public about the district's safety plans and notification process for positive cases in schools. I've also spoken with many teachers across the district who still have questions and safety concerns as well, which leads me to wonder why not even our teachers know the answers to these questions with students returning to the classroom in just a few days. First, is the district going to have a COVID data dashboard available similar to the ones put out by Grand Prairie ISD, Highland Park ISD, or Richardson ISD? If so, when? If not, how will cases be communicated so that parents and teachers can make informed decisions about their health and safety? What we've heard so far is that only students or teachers who have been in direct contact for more than 15 minutes will be notified, which quite frankly is not the level of transparency required in this situation. Every staff member and parent needs to know how many positive cases there are on their campus to make an informed decision about whether it's safe for them to return in person. How is the district ensuring distancing can take place with full 1:24 classroom ratios allowed? Is there a maximum number of students allowed in each classroom to account for proper distancing? What are the exact plans in place if more students come back face-to-face than can fit in a classroom? What is the district plan for when a teacher has to quarantine due to exposure or confirmed case of COVID, particularly with sub shortages and concerns around risk of exposure from additional people in the building and in contact with children? We're just days away from the first students who will return face-to-face. When will the district provide a percentage of staff or student infections that it would require closure of a school or classroom? What is that number? How will the school know that someone has tested positive? Is this based on the honor system? We're already seeing reports of parents knowingly sending children to school after testing positive. What about if someone's been exposed to someone else who tested positive and has chosen not to get themselves tested or quarantine at home? How will the school know or enforce this? What are the consequences for either a staff member or parents of student who are sent to school who knew they either had symptoms or exposure? How long will the process take to contact trace and report back to parents and school staff? If it takes even longer than one school day, how many more dozens of people are exposed while others are notified and tested? If the district has a specific plan for handling this, it should be made known to the public. And if the district does not have a specific plan for handling this, it has no business bringing children, teachers, and staff back on campus. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jacqueline Martinez.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you have 3 minutes to speak.
Good evening. Both my AWA and ADA applications were denied. At your last board briefing, Human Capital Management was asked why so many teachers were being denied, but the answer that was given only addressed how childcare was an issue that eventually resulted in a policy change. I applaud that decision and the willingness to be solution-oriented. However, HCM did not address the mass denials for valid health concerns. It was also stated by the chief of HCM that, quote, principals were allowed to make that decision at their individual campus. I know for a fact that my principal approved my AWA request, but unfortunately their decision was not honored despite the fact that they were making an ethical choice to take care of their teachers. Classes are 100% virtual until October, yet as of last week, teachers had to report to their campuses. I have continued to perform all my duties as a teacher of record from home, and that is because since last Thursday, I have been using my PTO days to do so. Today, I received an email that instructed me to return to campus by tomorrow, but with all due respect, I will not. I have demonstrated dedication and performed 100% of my responsibilities remotely, and more importantly, my students are learning. That should be the goal at all times. It is not my intention to be defiant, rebellious, or insubordinate. My health and well-being come first, so I am establishing my boundaries, a life skill I like to teach my students every year. The district's unwillingness to provide flexibility for their most valuable team members in the midst of a global pandemic demonstrates a lack of critical thinking, problem-solving skills, and emotional intelligence, all the skills we aim to teach our students, yet the district fails to practice what they preach. It is laughable that a district with a racial equity department pledges to address racial inequity while simultaneously silencing its teachers, many people of color, into compliance. You have COVID-19 hotspot zip codes where the population is predominantly black and brown, and you will only contribute more cases to the outbreaks that are sure to occur the moment you open in person. You are only shooting yourselves in the foot for forcing teachers to do something they do not feel safe doing. Your efforts to convince us that we are safe with all the hygiene theater you spew in the re-entry plan emails and tweets only result in creating a false sense of security for our most valuable population, and the quality of instruction will suffer as it takes a backseat to safety protocols. In all honesty, nothing about the way teachers have been treated during this challenging time surprises me. I have served this district long enough to have witnessed and experienced the disturbing normalized culture of fear-based toxic leadership. Nothing is being done to address it. You have teachers across the district who would never dream of speaking at a board meeting or using the very healthy life skill of establishing boundaries. I will end with this. If you have never taught a day in your life, you have no business occupying a leadership position in education. Except you, Trustee Carla, you're cool. Also, the moment you leave the classroom to pursue administration and climb the chain of command, you have a responsibility to take care of your teachers. We are the single most important factor in the students' academic success, and we deserve better. If you do cross over to the dark side and suddenly forget that you too were once exploited, overworked, underpaid, gaslighted, and made to second-guess your expertise, some food for thought. Not only is it tacky, it is extremely unprofessional when you use fear, guilt, shame, intimidation to control.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Our next speaker is Heather Douglas.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you, ma'am. This is Heather Douglas. I am in Dallas and have a student at Lakewood Elementary. I can't imagine the struggle that the board members are feeling over this circumstance, and so I appreciate you serving. I have a couple of points that I'd like to make, and an earlier speaker touched on it. It is really baffling to me that out of over 160 elementary schools in DISD, that Lakewood Elementary is the only school that is not allowed to go back full-time in person on October 5th. It is so shocking to me that we would leave one school out and let those kids suffer. If you look at the TEA guidelines, there are not requirements to have certain capacity issues. In fact, they even say if kids are going to be regularly within 6 feet of one another, they should plan for more frequent hand washing and sanitizing, and also put up plexiglass, which I know that we have talked about before in board meetings, and quite frankly, schools all over DFW have opened successfully using plexiglass and masks, and there are no major outbreaks. It is, again, baffling to me that 1 out of 160 elementary school students cannot open. At the very least, we should make a commitment to get the little kids back in. The kindergarten, first grade, and second grade cannot sit in front of a computer all day. In fact, the American Association of Pediatrics says that their screen time should be limited to no more than 2 hours a day in front of a screen. And yet that is what we're doing. It's staggering what we're doing to their little minds by requiring them to sit in front of a screen. And I even know friends at my school who have said, you know what, I have a 5th grader, but I'm willing to keep them home so that the younger kids can go back. So let's start with kinder and see where we are in capacity. Let's add first grade, then second grade. And if we can get 3rd grade in there full days, that's great. But they need to be in school. These are the kids that are still just learning how to be students, how to be in school. And if we don't train that to do this now, I hate to see where these schools are going to be in a couple of years and what the teachers are going to have to manage in the way of just getting kids to stand in line and follow instructions. Finally, I want to touch on one other school because I have a very good friend whose daughter goes there at Townview. That school accommodates 2,800 kids, and 821 indicated they wanted to return in person. But there has been no consideration and no option for those kids to go back in full time. So you have kids that are now sitting in front of a computer for 8 hours a day doing intensive learning and having no socialization. It's abhorrent what we're doing to these kids. And I don't know how else to say it other than that. I ask you to reconsider what you're doing at Lakewood and some of these other schools so that our kids can get the best that they deserve. I appreciate your time.
Your time has expired. Our next speaker is Sheila Walker. Sheila Walker.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, you have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to pull over driving. Okay, this is Sheila Walker. I'm the president of NEA Dallas. I reside at 10707 Big Ticket Drive in Dallas, Texas. I live in Carla Garcia's area. Today, first of all, I want to say thank you to at NEA Dallas. I want to say thank you to Dr. Cynthia Wilson and her team for extending the dates for employees that were having to originally dates were for them to stop coming with their teachers was this Friday, but it's been extended until the beginning of school. So I want to say thank you for that. Also, there are some concerns with our parents in the district about not being able to log on to computers. And the students, some previously speaker talked about the students being on the computer all day long. That's a little bit long for, second graders, third grade, well, any kids that's sitting at a computer all day long. And so just ask that you look at those items. I'm trying to drive. But anyway, and then another topic is some of our members have talked about the issues with one plexiglass at one table or at a desk in their classroom. So how are we going to rectify that and have more plexiglass in the areas that we need to have them in? Also, we're talking about the sizes of the rooms, and when the students come back, some of our classrooms are not large enough to even hold 25 students. And so when we rotate the students back into schools according to the hybrid plan, I appreciate that you hope that you will vote to keep the hybrid plan for our high school students. But how are we going to manage that and get all those students in the classroom at the time and be social distancing like we're supposed to be? Finally, there's a concern about there's a couple of tests coming up in October, the PSAT and the ACT. Some campuses have over 500 10th graders. How are we going to social distance these kids with the test? And one of the days is on a flex day, which is on a Wednesday when schools are closed. Is transportation going to be provided for these students? What are we supposed to do? These are just some questions and concerns that we have, NEA Dallas or just across the district totally. But I want you to know that we appreciate everything that you're doing to try to make us safe, and that's our plan, is to make us safe. And know that everyone makes mistakes, because with the pencil, there is an eraser. So thank you for your time and your effort.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Gina Torres.
Hello?
You have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, I'm Gina Torres. I'm a parent of 3, and 2 of my children go to high school at Skyline. The virtual learning has been working for us when the site does work. We've had some difficulties, but right now my concern is the safety. If they return, like my concern, they're especially my friend who's like, it's not about making friends right now. It's life or death, and I don't want to die. I mean, they have the mask, and they're good about washing their hands, keeping sanitizer, and so forth. There's not a way to limit, the youth. I mean, I just have to tell you, I see it. I see it in the neighborhood. I see it when I have to go to the essential shopping at Walmart or Sam's. I mean, it's scary for me just to get out there. But right now, my concern is just keep them as a virtual learning. I do have concerns that, okay, so they go out there, they're bus riders. How are they going to monitor that? I mean, there's not a way to space them out 6 feet. Are they honestly going to put only 10 students on a bus? I don't think that's a possibility. I get that they're going to do the fever check. There's not a way to put plexiglass on a bus. I mean, I don't even allow my oldest 21-year-old to go on the transit because it's scary out there. I'm just not going to take that chance. And as of looked it up just earlier today, as of September 23rd, Dallas County has new cases, 3,392. And then for the school returning, it shows 1,872 staff and students have had the COVID testing, and they're detected to be positive. None of those results has showed anybody to be cured. I mean, of course, I don't know when those results show up. But to come back to our home, my mom is 75 years old. I don't want her exposed to that. I mean, it's just not safe. And I just want to plead with the board to please consider to continue virtual learning. I realize it's going to be a tough decision because you have to consider all the staff that you have already in place. And I appreciate all the staff that has reached out when we do have concerns. And the awesome counselors there. But right now, I just don't see that there's a dry spell of not having any positive cases. So I just don't want
Thank
to
you.
send
Your
my
time has expired. Our next speaker is Raina Honia.
Good evening. I'm Rena Honey, president of Alliance AFT. Credit is due for all the work that has gone into being prepared for students returning to campuses. With that said, massive amounts of anxiety and stress still linger with the rank and file employees in the district. While the reentry plans look good on paper, the reality is that implementation is being interpreted by campus administrators and more people feel unsafe than those that feel safe. They're seeing administrators not wearing masks. There's visiting in groups without social distancing, other employees not following safety protocols, PPE not distributed to employees, and I could go on and on. The fact remains that employees are testing positive for the coronavirus and having to quarantine before the majority of students have even shown up. There's not been a consecutive 14-day decline in positive cases in the county, and people are still at great risk. The political, parental, and corporate pressures that are placed on you as decision makers seem to have clouded your judgment as to what is best for everyone. Many educators across this district urge you to extend distance learning for another 4 weeks and consider extending it for the first semester. In addition to the safety concerns, employee evaluations must also be addressed. Constructive criticism is always welcome to increase performance and mastery of skills. But if anyone thinks that conducting evaluations during this school year is the right thing to do, those who live through those evaluations and suffer the consequences through their compensation will tell you that you're very sadly mistaken. We're experiencing the most uncertain and inconsistent educational setting that anyone in our lifetime has faced. There are too many variables that cannot be calculated for that the fairness issue is totally in question. When it comes to testing, what guarantees are assured for testing security, alignment for content, validity and reliability of the test, virtual versus in-person test administration? Our educators must be held harmless again this year. Teachers cannot be held accountable for students' ability or inability to connect online or for parental support or lack of support. And what are the plans if the county has to shut everything down again because of a spike in cases like we encountered in March? Choose to be fair to those that continue to give abundantly to this district and the students they serve. Hold all staff harmless again this year because it is the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Zoe Holden.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, you have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you. My name is Zoe Holden with Alliance AFT, and I am speaking tonight for a myriad of reasons. First things first, schools should not reopen until CDC guidelines have been met, aka a 14-day reduction in cases. But if the district insists on bringing faculty, staff, and students back to campuses, it must be done so in the safest possible way, which so far the district is failing to do. In just casual conversations with friends who are educators, I have heard of administrators not wearing masks, even doing conga lines without masks or social distancing, staff on campus without PPE. Some buses have 56 students on a 40-seat bus, and some teachers have 30-plus students in a classroom designed for at most 25 students. In what universe is this safe social distancing? When a student is on a bus for half an hour, or in a classroom for a full day, or a cafeteria for another half hour, you are risking exposure to the virus not only to students, but staff as well. Additionally, teachers and staff in high-risk categories, such as those with cancer, organ transplants, and immunocompromised individuals, should be allowed to work from home, no question. Denying ADA and work-from-home requests from the most vulnerable is unconscionable and inhumane. One high-level official is on the record as saying that cancer patients do not need to work from home because they wear masks during flu season. I feel I must remind the superintendent and school board that COVID-19 is not the flu. COVID-19 patients, even if they exhibited no symptoms at all, risk potentially permanent neurological or organ damage. The absolute lack of empathy and understanding is phenomenal. Many of the school board have made strong points that COVID-19 is stressful to students, and there's no doubt that it is, but it is equally stressful for our educators as well, who may be battling illness in their families, job loss from partners, making sure their own children are educated, and more. It is no secret that the district administrators micromanaged its educators to the point of exhaustion before the pandemic. Virtual and in-person learning adds to that burden, and there has been no real direction from the district about how exactly this will happen besides, more or less, make it work, and expecting the same results as in-person learning under the most optimal of circumstance. I urge the school board to lower the testing burden on already stressed students and educators and decouple pay from testing scores and hold teachers harmless again. In summary, treat your staff right and learn leadership. Give them the PPE they need, ensure proper social distancing, allow the most vulnerable to work from home, and reduce the burden of testing on students and educators, and shield them from administrative bullying and micromanaging during the most uncertain and difficult time. And as a PSA to teachers, you still get planning time by state law. If you're not getting 450 minutes every 10 days, call your union. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Diane Birdwell.
Hi, my name is Diane Birdwell. I'm with NEA Dallas for 22 years, and I live at 5705 Meadowick. My topic tonight is like nobody else's because, frankly, I see things a little differently. Yes, we're concerned about COVID. We're concerned about a lot of things, but I'm also concerned about the leadership or lack thereof in this district. When Mike Miles came to town and TFA came to town, the idea of having administrators who had been in classrooms for 5, 7, or 10 years went the way of the dodo. Suddenly, after 2 or 3 years in the classroom, where you're just finally learning what works, what doesn't work, where the copier is, and how to work it, you could suddenly go for a master's degree and become an administrator. Now I see that there's a program out there with UNT and the DISD trying to get administrators into the P-TECH program, of which I'm a part. This is my 3rd year in P-TECH. And I was very disturbed, as were other P-TECH teachers across the district, to see that the ad for it says, all you need is a 3.25 average, blah, 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 and 2 years of teaching in a classroom. Not 2 years in P-TECH, not 2 years of prior administration, just 2 years of teaching to help run a program that deals with community colleges, 2 different administrations, 2 different locations, 2 different sets of classes. The cheapening of administration is what happened after you cheapened what it meant to be a teacher in this district. You have disrespected veteran teachers like me and others by the thousands for the last 5 to 10 to 15 years. And now it's come to this. 2 years, someone who's been teaching for 2 years is going to tell me how to teach? You've got to be joking. They haven't even seen a cohort go through a school. They haven't seen a program come in and then fail and get bought out or changed like it always does. This is why the suburbs don't have to do anything about recruiting. This is why the suburbs get our experienced teachers and our experienced administrators. And I'll tell you something else. If you're only asking for someone to have 2 years of teaching experience, that means you want the youngest of the young. That means you don't want experienced adults, teachers who have been in the classroom for years. That's age discrimination, guys. Don't think we're not watching in NEA Dallas. It's amazing how disrespectful this whole thing is. If you don't want experienced teachers, then tell us, and we'll just go somewhere else. Y'all have a nice evening. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Anthony Peterson.
Okay, can you hear me?
You have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, my name is Anthony Peterson. I am a professional social worker, driver, bus driver, and a grandparent of a student. It seems really easy during the troubled times to treat people of color, especially black people, wrong with little to no respect. High levels of lead water in the black community, Flint, Michigan. Police shootings of unarmed black men and women, United States of America. George Floyd public lynching, Minnesota. Dallas Independent School District, Dallas, Texas. Bus drivers and monitors are the only employees in the district where there is no requirement to social distance. 95% of the drivers and monitors are black. Most are seniors and most have underlying medical conditions. So now the question is, why did DISD decision makers decide that these workers' lives was not worth social distancing? Any concern for the students on the bus that will contract COVID due to non-social distancing? Especially when you can load a bus up to 50 or 60 students. Are you treating your school bus drivers and monitors like heroes in 2020 or like Negroes in the 1920s? We are confused because drivers and monitors are treated poorly. Little to no real social distancing practice at the transportation centers, poor and inappropriate working conditions at Pat Rainey Center, not enough monitors to assist behavioral challenged students on the buses, drivers and monitors' inability to receive proper face masks from the district to protect themselves from contracting the virus. N95s are available, but they are not for drivers or monitors. And have the parents been informed of the non-social distancing policy on the bus? And last, a memo was sent out on September the 18th, 2020 to several transportation employees stating that an employee in their training group had direct contact with a family member who tested positive for COVID-19. The only employee is in quarantine waiting for her test results. But the other 40 to 50 members in that group had close contact with that employee with no recommendations to get tested or quarantined. This group was made up of majority black employees. This needs to be investigated. Transparency is integrity, and it's the whole truth. It's an expression of nothing to hide. In student transportation, it's a lot of half-truths presented and is putting a lot of innocent employees at risk for contracting COVID-19.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Paige Love. Paige Love.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, you have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you, ma'am. My name is Paige Love. I am a parent of 2 at Lakewood Elementary. At the beginning of this meeting, as we listened to all of the district reports of all the great things going on in DISD, it is clear why the families at Lakewood Elementary have chosen to put their kids in a DISD school. We believe in DISD. We have not left for other ISDs or private schools. We believe in you, and we trust you to make the right decisions for our kids, all of our kids. For our school leaders to figure out a way for all of our elementaries to return back in person all day, except for Lakewood Elementary, does not represent the trust in the leaders that you are truly an advocate for all of our kids. As your current largest elementary, our capacity is not a new issue. We have been crowded for years. Even with the new addition of our building, last year we still had to add a kindergarten class months into school in our computer room with no windows. Since the main issue of overcrowding will not be addressed with the proper rezoning of our schools, our kids are now penalized by not being allowed to go in person all day, like the rest of DISD elementaries. The vast majority of our families at Lakewood Elementary want to go back to school, so let us. If our campus administration did not feel there was an option to bring back everyone full-time safely, therefore deferring to hybrid, please provide the parents of Lakewood Elementary with the data used to make that decision. None of that has been properly reported. Please require campus administration to be transparent on how this decision was made and allow us to come together as a community to figure out a way for our kids to get in school full time. I have the privilege of coaching many of our Lakewood kids in sports. I have observed a huge change in our kids' emotions this month. I believe this is a direct correlation to not getting to go back to school. They need school. They need you. They need to be back in a traditional school setting. Please adequately represent all DISD students and find a way to get the families at Lakewood Elementary that want school all day in person to happen. There is a way, and I urge you to take a serious look at our attendance zone and let's build a stronger DISD. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Vanessa Sahun.
Hi, my name is Vanessa. I teach in South Dallas 75211 code. Recommendation wanting to make a difference in students' academic life.
Ms. Sahun?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can now.
Okay. Hi. I teach in South Dallas 75211 code. Recommendation wanting to make a difference in students' academic life.
Ms. Sahun?
For themselves and their rights to education. And now I'm here speaking to you not only for myself,
Ms.
my
Sahun?
students, or students' parents, but for our fellow educators as well, all of them. I was fortunate enough to have landed in a school where my first years was a huge learning experience and a growth process me. I was extremely supported by great principal and coworkers. I received our theater pattern commitment teacher award, just hitting my second year of teaching. I felt recognized, appreciated, and supported. All of that matters. People learned, and I learned to be flexible.
The next speaker is Chris Dia Houston.
Good evening. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Hey, awesome. Good evening, Superintendent Hinojosa and Board of Trustees. Excuse me, this is Christia Houston, Dallas ISD alumni, employee, and an executive board member of Alliance AFT. AFT remains that the district should maintain remote learning until Dallas County shows a consecutive 14-day decline in positive cases, transmission rates, hospitalizations, and deaths, and until we are out of the danger zone before students return to campuses. I've spoken before about issues related to employees living and working with underlying conditions during this pandemic. Many of us who submitted AWA requests were denied, and some who went on to submit ADA accommodation requests were denied as well. Of those denials are people who have medical conditions that are covered by the ADA who are requesting reasonable accommodations to work remotely. One of those conditions is asthma, and one of the asthmatics who was denied is me. Asthma is a condition in which a person's airways become inflamed, narrowed, and swollen and produce extra mucus, which makes it difficult to breathe. The major life activity that asthma impacts is breathing. Even when asthma is controlled and managed through daily medication, it can often be triggered by stress, dust, pollens, pesticides, fragrances, animals, chemicals, cigarette smoke, and other illnesses. It can often be life-threatening on its own. According to the CDC, people with moderate to severe asthma may be at higher risk of getting very sick from COVID-19 because the virus can affect an asthmatic's already impaired respiratory system and respiratory tract. Having asthma since childhood, I already know the experience of having breathing tubes down my respiratory tract, to waking up out of sedation in the ICU with the doctors telling me that they had almost lost me that time. As an SMU student, having my dorm neighbor stand in as my respiratory therapist to clap on my sides and back and help loosen the mucus in my lungs. and in my prior role as a classroom teacher, being unable to go to the zoo field trip because the previous year caused a major allergy and asthma flare-up. So this is not about not wanting to go to work or anything of that nature. I love my role and the students that I serve. My request to work remotely during the pandemic is about preserving my life. Every day is about avoiding known triggers of asthma, and I've already seen what asthma can do because I live with it. I've already seen what COVID-19 can do because it's taking over 200,000 lives. The last thing that I want to find out is what COVID-19 can do to an asthmatic, and that asthmatic is me. Thank you and have a great evening.
Our next speaker is Maritza Martinez.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
If you could speak up, we could hear you.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Maritza Martinez. I'm a teacher at DISD. This is my 5th year. The United States has had over 200,000 COVID-19 deaths, 200,000 lives which have ended too soon. The United States population makes up 4% of the world's population, yet we make up 20% of the world's COVID-19 deaths. There have been over 1,000 deaths in Dallas, which means that 1 out of every 200 dead was a Dallas resident whose life was tragically cut short. Additionally, Dallas County has about 4% of the population of Texas, yet has had about 7% of the state's COVID-19 deaths. Additionally, the state's daily cases are at an all-time high today since the start of the pandemic. Schools will without a doubt facilitate the spread of COVID-19. How many students, staff, and families will be impacted by a debilitating illness and possibly die? We do not know the long-term effects of this novel virus. Those who recover may end up with debilitating long-term conditions. It is ridiculous how some continue to downplay the severity of the virus and that we are set to return in-person learning, which will, without a doubt, facilitate the spread of COVID-19 and lead to even more unnecessary deaths. One death is too many. We know this highly contagious virus is airborne. Hospital COVID patients are placed in negative pressure rooms so that the airborne virus around them does not escape and go out into the hallways of civilians, other patients, or healthcare workers. Classrooms often share HVAC systems with adjacent rooms, which would allow the airborne virus to spread from asymptomatic or pre-symptomatic individuals to those in neighboring rooms. Due to the airborne nature of the virus, individuals must be informed if there is a confirmed case of the virus, not just the individuals who are within 6 feet, but any individual who is in the same room, bus, or presence as an infected person. District guidelines call for social distance whenever possible, which demonstrate the utter disregard for safety. A virus can be transmitted at all times, not only at select times. It is unsafe for students to be in classrooms when they will not be able to maintain social distance. I currently have 28 students on my roster. If about 50% return in person, like the campus survey shows, then there is absolutely no way that they will be able to distance within the classroom. Safety measures, including temperature checks, are useless because you are failing to consider that pre-symptomatic and asymptomatic individuals can still transmit the virus. Please consider student and staff safety. We must wait until we meet the following criteria: at least 14 days of declining cases in Dallas County and the state of Texas at less than 5% positivity rate. I understand that some families are ready to send their children back to school, but you must prioritize health and safety and, again, put human lives above all else. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Emily Johns.
Hello, can you hear me?
You have 3 minutes to speak.
My name is Emily Johns, and I have 3 children who are in 1st and 3rd grade at Lakewood Elementary in District 2. I'm here tonight because of concerns related to the decision that Lakewood Elementary will operate with a hybrid attendance model starting October 5th. My concerns include the following. Number 1, the true goals of this district are not aligned with meeting the needs of our next generation, but are based on political agendas. Number 2, all elementary students in Dallas are not being treated equally and are not being given the same opportunity to participate in the education system provided by DISD. Due to inadequate planning by the district and campus administration, Lakewood Elementary students are being denied opportunities offered to other elementary students within DISD. Because of the continuous change in school start dates,
new requirements that must be met by the TEA and other authorities, and now changes in the attendance method, the parents of Lakewood are not able to provide the same level of continuity for their children that other students in the district are experiencing. Why are the students at Lakewood bearing the weight of inaccurate or outdated boundaries drawn for purposes of assigning elementary schools? Has DISD taken the effort to re-verify proof of residency for each and every student to ensure that the district's policy related to school boundaries is being enforced properly? How is it possible that Lakewood Elementary has almost brand new construction on campus for its entire student population, yet now you say we are facing an overcrowding problem that other schools are clearly not facing? Number 3, I'm concerned that the safety of students was not the true reason for the delay in starting school and the decision to shift to a hybrid attendance model. Our tax dollars have provided us with highly professional educators that should be given the same duty and responsibility in our community as medical professionals who have embraced the COVID challenge. Safety requirements and standards could be met with the use of all mixed-use spaces like the cafeteria, gyms, special rooms, portable buildings, renting space in other locations, and the hiring of additional temporary teachers or aides to staff the extra classrooms to meet these requirements. Number 4, there is a large concern that the results of the surveys parents filled out regarding schedules and attendance were manipulated based on predetermined agendas and then subjectively reported in order to meet these pre-made decisions. Was Lakewood Elementary penalized for a high response rate to the attendance surveys sent to parents for feedback? The data shows that many other elementary schools received a much lower response rate and therefore did not meet the threshold to shift to a hybrid attendance model. Number 5, I am concerned that the question answered when making this decision to delay full in-person school was not how can we provide equal opportunity for the Lakewood Elementary students, but instead was a quick and hasty decision to take the easy way out and to avoid a return to full in-person education. The questions and concerns presented are not meant to create more problems than the evidently already overburdened school district can handle, but rather an opportunity to emphasize that Lakewood Elementary has the parent involvement, intellect, and resources to provide solutions to the problem. I'm hopeful that the district will continue.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Our next speaker is Ashley Ciamingo.
Good evening, Superintendent Hinojosa and board members. My name is Dr. Fiamingo. I'm a science teacher at Franklin D. Roosevelt High School and a member of Alliance AFT. If we view the past week as an experiment, the evidence clearly indicates that our campus is not ready for in-person instruction. Anecdotal evidence from trusted friends and colleagues reveals the same for numerous other campuses in the district. Even with teachers working in their own rooms and the small number of students on campuses, there have been reported exposures of individuals to others who are COVID positive and rampant disregard for mask wearing and social distancing practices. The protective supplies and careful plans that were touted in August and are being shared with the public have not been deployed. We simply are not ready. Specialized unit students returned to campus on September 17th, and many of the promised supplies have not been provided. Amongst them, plexiglass dividers, face shields, student masks, air purifiers, hand sanitizer, and disinfectant spray. We are literally not protecting the most vulnerable of our school community if we do not provide ADL units with these essential items in sufficient quantities. The district has set these teachers and their paraprofessionals up for failure. It was reported to me that bus drivers and monitors are not taking student temperatures and that students are not wearing masks on buses despite district policies regarding mask wearing on buses and in buildings. As we move towards welcoming more students onto our campus next week, there are a few measures that must be in place lest we experience even greater failures. First, social distancing on the school bus and in classrooms should be a mandatory requirement and not when possible. If social distancing is not possible under the current reopening plan, the plan should be revised to ensure proper social distancing requirements are followed at all times. Current COVID-19 disclosure protocols at the worksite are inadequate and often vague with regards to who will be contacted when there's a confirmed case at the campus. We are requesting that anyone who entered a room or bus where the confirmed case also visited in the last 1 to 2 days should be notified of a possible exposure, regardless of masking and distancing. The CDC has acknowledged that the virus is aerosolized, so plexiglass and surface sanitation are not sufficient protection. It is not enough to only contact the individuals who are in the same bubble group, shared a bus seat, or otherwise meet a narrow definition of close contact. We must do better. All PPE and cleaning equipment should be provided at a minimum of 2 business days before the arrival of students to ensure time to notify administration of shortages. The specialized units are reporting a lack of supplies even after having students for a week already. Teachers and other staff do not need the additional burden of wondering where to find a mask for a student who shows up without their own and need sufficient time to configure their rooms with the provided protective equipment and time to familiarize themselves with the campus protocols prior to receiving students. We need to learn from the experiences of the past week and from other schools and districts. If we get this wrong, there are lives at stake. Tread carefully, because as the biggest district in North Texas and one of the largest in the nation, many eyes are watching, and missteps and miscalculations will not go unnoticed, nor will they be quickly forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Olympia Johnson.
Good evening. This is Olympia Johnson speaking. I am a music teacher at 2 schools, at William Brown Miller and Thornton Elementary, and I just wanted to speak quickly on concerns about social distancing being consistently enforced throughout the school day, especially as it relates to specials teachers, physical education, art, music, and other such classes. There's been talk of there being a cohort approach to teaching for the, let's say, the homeroom teachers, the self-contained classes, but that, as far as I know, does not apply to specials teachers. We see the entire building, so we are at increased risk ourselves, and even if we are asymptomatic carriers, that means that we are putting other people at risk because we have contact with the entire student body. And let's compound that risk of exposure in the case of those who work at more than one campus. So that's just something to be considered. And also, I was reading on the reentry plan that the average classroom can accommodate 19 to 20 desks with the 6-foot distancing guidelines. Well, in one of my classrooms, that is definitely not the case. In the pre-COVID world, that classroom had about 22 desks, and I usually had more than 22 students. So as of now, I can safely set up about 11 desks in that room, and it's more likely that I will have more than 11 students at a given period. Another consideration I just wanted to mention is that oftentimes for specials classes, sometimes 2 sections of classes are combined to attend their specials. So that is another case where social distancing would not be possible. I just wanted to mention these concerns in a public forum as we move closer to opening school full time. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Christian Hernandez.
Can you hear me?
You have 3 minutes to speak.
Great. My name is Christian Hernandez, District 6, and I'm speaking today because more than a week later, my family has been left with many questions and mostly with a lot of silence. When my brother brought the controversial Kyle Rittenhouse assignment to my attention, he did this because he trusted me to take care of it, to make sure something like that didn't happen again, and I'm committed to fulfilling that expectation. His principal was quick to call me the day of, and I got an email back from Trustee Henry, and that's it. I know if a student misbehaved, the trajectory of consequences would be swift and clear. It took me responding to multiple media requests in order for there to be an answer from the district, which I may add was never directed to me, my parents, or even my brother. All that we saw was the same generic letter that got posted in my brother's Google Classroom. The assignment itself was quickly removed, and my brother was relieved when he had a sub in that class 2 days later. The students received no explanation or apology. All to say, this is not a teaching moment. This is a moment to interrogate what is not being done, to where a teacher thought this was okay and went out of his way to do this. What is the district failing to do to prevent this type of situation and harm from happening in the future? In other classrooms, DISD needs to provide explicit anti-racist professional development and a plan to train all students, teachers, staff, school and district administration, and school board trustees expeditiously. I think the district needs to take racial equity work seriously and have race-explicit solutions based in policy and practices. Educators and those who decide the framework for educational settings should be able to clearly and explicitly define race, racism, and have a deep understanding of racism as interpersonal, institutional, and most importantly, structural manifestation. This process must also be transparent with the public, where the goals and metrics of success are clear and capable of being measured. This process can and should include community input and learning. I'm not here to get an apology. I'm not even here to ask for that teacher's firing. I'm here to ask what the district is doing to make sure no student ever has to deal with this again, and what commitment y'all have to keeping students safe in such a tumultuous time. This is my brother's senior year, and I want him to know what solidarity and accountability look and feel like. I think it's entirely overdue. Also, while I'm here, I want to reiterate the calls for safe reopenings made by previous speakers. Despite what some people may be suggesting, it's not safe for people, be they teachers, students, bus drivers, custodians, or other support staff, to be in such close quarters for learning. School employees don't need to be heroes, they deserve workers' rights. I know virtual learning is an adjustment, but COVID calls for a reprioritization of our people's health over a framework of productivity or funding. The best way to get rid of COVID once and for all is to limit our close interactions. I would think a state well known for stressing an abstinence-only approach to education would be able to understand that. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Anita Dean. Anita Dean.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. Well, my biggest concern is my grandchildren contacting this virus. They are social distancing and wearing masks 100%. But what about the kids around them? I see families in the neighborhood gathering, and what if they come in contact with those that aren't as careful as we are? That really points out to me that what if they bring that sickness to the house? I am 75 years old. Are you, the administration, the district, able to take care of all my funeral arrangements, medical, or whatever? And if you do, then I would like that in writing, because this is too dangerous for anybody to go out there. As I have heard from especially the teachers that have voiced their concerns, and even they have medical issues, they're not even taken into consideration. So what about my children? What about them? Don't you all care enough? Is it the money? You can't think about the money right now. You have to think about safety. If you have children, you have to think safety. Also, as a volunteer that I was several years, I noticed that some of the times the bathrooms did not have paper towels, did not have soap, did not have sanitizers or toilet paper. That's a very high risk for anyone. So you want us to have the children wash their hands and everything, and you don't supply the items that we need? That's very, very risky. Long story short, I much rather have these children, their high schoolers, do their virtual learning, and they're dedicated. They do this every morning like clockwork. They dress up like they're really going to school. And they sit down and they do whatever they have to do. Yes, it's an adjustment, but I'd rather have them here, adjusting here at the house, than having to worry if they have contacted something and then what? I'm next to go to a funeral or whatever. My family's not ready for that. So thank you for listening and have a good evening.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sean Smithson.
Hello, this is Sean Smithson. I have a kindergarten and second grade daughters at Lakewood Elementary School. Earlier this week, I was completely floored to learn that Lakewood is the only elementary school out of 147 in DISD required to implement a hybrid model. We've been told that's because the parent survey data had us at over 60% in person. I believe our return stats are inflated by parents choosing the in-person option because it gave the flexibility to change their minds later on, whereas the virtual option did not. However, even if we accepted that higher return rate, DISD told us that the survey results simply triggered an assessment, and the real reason Lakewood has to go hybrid is because of space limitations. Okay, well, what are the metrics that we use to take a look at those space limitations? None of us at Lakewood have seen them. Did they factor in options like using Lakewood's flex spaces, such as a library or lunchroom, Or what about our outdoor learning options like Lola? Did they consider the low COVID rate that we have in the Lakewood attendance boundary? Those things, combined with the district-lauded solutions of masks, frequent hand washing, and, as the Assistant of School Leadership Leslie Stevens put it, our new best friend plexiglass, should be enough to comfortably ensure full-time instruction. Incredibly, I don't think DISD even surveyed the Lakewood community, the full SBDM community, or PTA to brainstorm ideas for a full in-person return. Why? Because DISD waited until less than a week before students walked through the door to require a hybrid plan, which affects exactly one elementary school. And here we sit, one day away from walking my kindergarten daughter through the doors, and I have no idea what time either of my kids will even go to school. I, like many others in Lakewood, am a part of a two-parent working household. How are we supposed to plan for childcare to accommodate this schedule on such short notice? Not only that, our teachers are also affected because the district policy changed and Lakewood teachers are no longer allowed to bring their own kids to school. What are they supposed to do with their children who are also only in school for half days? DISD would have you believe that the solution to either of these issues is simply transferring the kids to other schools for full-time education. That's simply not fair to our kids. They've already suffered through and lost ground during the emergency education provided last spring. And then this fall, DISD touted their virtual-only plan, asking our kids to form bonds with teachers and classmates via Zoom, figure out technology, mostly on their own because their parents work full-time, and oh yes, actually try to learn something. And bless those kiddos and those teachers because they are trying mightily. The only solution is full-time face-to-face, not to uproot them, shift them into different and unfamiliar schools in the middle of the year, and make them start over again. If the past 6 months have taught us everything, it's that our youngest students need full-time instruction to be successfully educated. It is unacceptable that DISD is failing to provide that education to one and only one group of elementary students. I ask you to stop piling unnecessary stress on our kids and teachers, stop treating one school differently than the other 146, and educate our kids in the most effective manner possible. Allow our kids to get the education they deserve and go back full-time immediately. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Rosemary Kurtz.
Hi. At the beginning of this school year, all DISD teachers had to complete a professional development session called Social Emotional Learning and Trauma-Informed Care, Campus Culture Priorities. The session had the theme of Maslow before they can bloom, a reference to the need for kids to meet the basic levels of Maslow's hierarchy of needs before we can move them up to higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy. Maslow's hierarchy's second level is titled Safety, which can include health and resources. Teachers in DISD do not feel safe right now, but no matter. Apparently, kids need to Maslow before they can bloom as students, DISD. But the district expects its teachers to bloom as teachers, regardless of whether our basic needs are being met. The SEL and Trauma-Informed Care professional development also included a request that we write a reflection on how should the pandemic, social injustice issues, stress, and adverse childhood experiences impact considerations for reentry. In mine, I said that taking these into account means that teachers need to focus on our kids' well-being, on catching them up as best we can, on making them feel safe, and trying to establish comforting routines and some semblance of normalcy. I said that teachers should focus on these things more than on standardized test scores. A later point in the lesson said that as teachers, we need to, quote, prioritize relationships and well-being over assignments and behavioral compliance, end quote, which I think indicates that I was on the right track. However, I also wrote how this was ironic messaging, coming from a district that has not only refused to suspend its own standardized test, the ACPs, but has chosen this year to add on another standardized test, the MAP, and is continuing to try to implement a teacher evaluation system, TEI, that directly ties these standardized test scores to our pay. So if a teacher wants to be sure they meet their own Maslow need for economic security, they need to focus on test-taking skills and scores, not relationships, as this professional development encourages. The district's unwillingness to practice what it preaches hurts our teachers and our students. The district preaches SEL strategies, especially in stressful times like these, while simultaneously inflicting more stress on teachers than is necessary, making it harder for us to implement the SEL strategies that would help our students. To practice what it preaches, the district needs to, number one, allow teachers to bring their children to school next week if they do not have alternative childcare. The district has now again announced that children of staff can't be present since students will be back, even though most students, including most children of staff, will not have an in-person option next week. Number two, suspend TEI and ACPs, at least for now. If they are serious about prioritizing relationships over scores, then suspend it indefinitely, but especially during these volatile times. 3, allow teachers that do not feel safe teaching in person to continue to teach virtually, just as students who do not feel safe can choose to learn virtually. Be transparent about COVID cases in school. It does not help anyone's sense of safety to find out that they will only be notified of a positive case if they meet a host of criteria, including prolonged exposure of over 15 minutes within 6 feet without a mask, basically making it as narrow as possible so that the district does not have to tell parents and staff about positive cases in their school and not give them the opportunity to make their own risk assessment. This would be a good start. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Denise Rodriguez.
Denise Rodriguez, my pronouns of a DA student who is concerned about the safety of my spouse's workplace. Don't ask, don't tell is what school leadership said when they were asked if they would notify teachers and parents if there was a COVID case in school. I am appalled that this flippant response was provided by the people who are supposed to lead. I waited 4 hours today to share what was said because parents, teachers, and communities should be aware this is the thinking of leadership at some schools in DISD. Basically, there will be no transparency. Under current guidelines, the school will not notify people who have been exposed to the virus unless they were exposed for at least 15 minutes. There could be a student in class who is sick. If that student is next to your child for 14 minutes and not 15 minutes, technically, the school would not have to let you know. Why is DISD afraid to be open with teachers and parents? Are the trustees ready to answer these questions by parents, teachers, and concerned community members? School leadership is failing our communities during a very critical time. Right now, students need teachers, and teachers need support from leadership to be able to do their jobs. But unfortunately, for some teachers, school leadership and DISD itself is failing them every day. Teachers have been in school buildings starting on September 17th. They had also been in schools before that date because the administration forcefully encouraged teachers to have bulletin boards and rooms ready. Keep in mind that students were not supposed to start in school until October. There is no enforcement of basic safety protocols. My spouse has already seen teachers and staff that cannot keep their mask on, or people that have their mask on under their nose. Some of their colleagues have also been seen wearing gator-type masks, which offer no protection to the people around.
Thank you. Our next speaker
There have also encouraged teachers to congregate together in a single area of food. Hello? Am I still going?
Yes.
It is apparent that the people in charge of the biggest decisions on campus
Your time
are the
has
people
expired.
with the least experience. Hello?
Our next speaker is Anita Nunez.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, you have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Anita Nunez. I'm a community organizer with a local nonprofit, but I used to be a high school teacher. My husband, I'm sorry, not a high school teacher, a pre-K teacher at Dallas ISD. And my husband is currently a high school teacher, and my mom is also a pre-K teacher. So I've got a lot riding in this, struggle. And not only that, the people we work with in my nonprofit are primarily Dallas students. And just in the last week, 2 of my students, literally in the last 3 days, 2 of my students have tested positive COVID. And they're high school students. They've been socially distancing since March. And they still managed to get it. So imagine what the numbers are going to look like in a week and 2 weeks and 3 weeks. My husband is having to go back to campus because freshmen are going back to campus next week. And I know what Dallas ISD is like. I've worked there. There isn't soap in the bathrooms. There's not toilet paper. Children, especially the little kids, they'll come with a shirt on and then they'll leave with somebody else's shirt on, They cannot, even if they wanted to, they cannot socially distance. It is ridiculous to think that children, literal children, are going to be able to follow these guidelines that y'all are saying you're implementing in the schools, right? And even those guidelines aren't good enough. By CDC standards, they're not good enough. There is no way that we can go back to in-person teaching safely until, I don't know, it's going to be months. It's unrealistic and unscientific to think that we're going to be able to reopen safely. And as one of our students said a month ago in another one of these board meetings, the blood is going to be on y'all's hands, right? And it's not going to be just blood. It's going to be lungs that are harmed for the rest of their lives, livers and hearts, because the virus messes those up too, right? So even the students who recover in a week or 2 or 3, they still might have long-term health effects of this virus. And it's not just the students who are going to get sick, it's their family members. One of the students that I know who got sick this week, she had to take care of her entire extended family who lives all in one house while still being sick, right? So the students that we work with, that y'all work with, they're having to take care of kids during the day. They are having to have part-time jobs to help support their families.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Our next speaker is Isaac Steen.
Hello?
You have 3 minutes to speak.
All right, I'm Isaac Steen, and I wanted to talk about a non-agenda item, which is a hot topic. And one thing is I want to thank first all the teachers and custodians and bus drivers for dealing with this pandemic and knowing how important it is and how serious it is. And I hope that this administration and this board of trustees will understand this is a pandemic and it's serious. And I don't understand how we can let the kids go back to school, but we can't let the public and the parents come down to board meetings to address our issues in person. But it's all right for the kids to go back to school, the principals to go to school, and not only that, for the teachers to go to school. Teachers are parents, grandparents, and they're citizens, taxpayers, and voters. And while I'm on the topic, I think it's so unfair for this board and this administration to pass different things on our agendas while we cannot come down there and voice our opinions. And one of the things I want to talk about is the fact that DISD wants to put a school campus on Paul Quinn College along with KIPP Charter School, knowing fully well that the people over here in the southern sector are sick and tired of charter schools popping up like mushrooms after the rain. And we don't like charter schools. They're bogarting their way into our community. And for DISD to partner with them and put a campus, on the same campus with them, knowing at the same time that they have been accused of dropping their kids off at DISD sites and having the parents pick them up and drop them off at the DISD schools for the charter school people can have us babysitting their kids after hours. I think it's a shame that the public and the community did not have any input on this decision, because I have fought charter schools in this area for the last 6 years, and any trustee that's on the board that's getting money from the charter school people, I think it is a conflict of interest. Our problem is not so much of the charter schools, but it's people on the board of trustees and people on the city council that makes money off of our kids. And I said this before, and I say this again, that our kids are not for sale. This is not the youth slave trade. It is our kids, and they.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Our next speaker is Katrina Rasmussen.
Good evening. Thank you, trustees and Dr. Hinojosa. My name is Katrina Rasmussen. I am a proud Dallas ISD teacher. I am married to a teacher, and I am a mom of 2 elementary school kids. Dr. Hinojosa, I appreciated your dedication to the data for safely reopening schools when you spoke to the press in August. Braving criticism, you stood boldly in favor of following the science. It was clear that the safety of our students and staff were your priority. According to the latest data, our county-wide positivity rate is hovering around 10%. Judge Jenkins stated that the decline in cases has stopped and we are seeing an increase again. By these standards, reopening face-to-face is an enormous risk. I applaud my campus leadership who have worked tirelessly to ensure that when students come back to campus, we are doing everything we can to keep everyone safe. Many of my students live in multi-generational homes, and the risk of this virus spreading to their families weighs heavily on our hearts. Our school nurse, maintenance staff, support staff, and leadership team have done an amazing job under these circumstances. Nonetheless, the strain is wearing on all of us. Tonight, I ask for compassion and grace for all district employees. It is so easy to see us as numbers or workers or the manpower needed to keep our schools running. Please see us as the individual people we are, with families, with people who depend on us. So many of us already make enormous sacrifices for our students. Having a teaching mother means my own children make sacrifices too. This pandemic has increased what we are called to do for our students. We have borne this burden proudly, and I am the first to say how thankful I am that Dallas ISD has made decisions based on what is right, not what is popular. Please continue to lead boldly in the service of what is just and good for our community. Teachers, administrators, and support staff are in this business because it is personal to us. Our kids, our students, shape our lives as much as we shape theirs. We are working 14-hour days right now. We are stressed about our health, our own families. I don't know what I'm doing with my kids next week. We are neglecting the things that make life sweet. We are building the plane while it is already in the air, and we are so tired. We will keep sacrificing because it is how we are wired, because to do less than what is needed hurts. We will keep sacrificing because our kids are our kids, and we would do no less for our own flesh and blood. Please keep us in mind when you vote tonight. The decisions you make have human consequences. I will always strive to do what is asked of me. Please understand the cost we bear when we answer this calling. When she introduced herself to us, my principal said, "I would not ask you to do something that I would not do myself." These are powerful words of a servant leader, and they inspire trust. I ask humbly that you respect the sacrifices that we are all making to serve our students by not asking us for more than we can give. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Vanessa Sahun.
Hi, can you hear me?
You have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay, hi. My name is Vanessa. I teach South Dallas, 75211 zip code. I came into teaching wanting to make a difference in students' academic life, but I also wanted to teach them to stand up for themselves and their right to education. Now I'm here speaking not only for myself, for my students, for our students' parents, but for our other fellow educators all over Dallas ISD. I was fortunate enough to have landed in a school where my first 3 years were such a huge learning experience and a time of growth for me. I was extremely supported by a great principal and great coworkers that I received our Feeder Parents Commitment Keeper Award, just hitting my second year of teaching. I felt recognized, appreciated, and cared for by the district. I felt like I mattered. I quickly learned the ropes and learned to be flexible and adaptable to any and all circumstances as a teacher. I'm 7 years into teaching, same district, same school, and for the most part, same coworkers. I'm fortunate enough to have a campus where the teacher-to-teacher morale is beyond exceptional. We work well together, and we have great communication amongst us teachers. Flexibility, adaptability. Now, those are the skills that we have as teachers, but we are being reminded time and time again during this pandemic that we must be flexible. We must adapt. We must manage. We must be positive. We must plan ahead in short notice, and we must continue to move forward. As you ask for us teachers to do all this, why can't we get the same from you? As you all know, there's a shortage of subs all over Dallas already, and it's affecting some of us, including myself. So I'm managing 36 kids a day with my partner teacher, and yes, it's a challenge, but we're doing it. And now I'm being asked the night before to add an additional 18 kids to my instructional day because someone on our grade level is out for days. Give me your Zoom meeting, your Google Classroom. Sure, here you go. Call parents to find out who has technology. Okay, done. Remind parents to fill out the survey. Done. Let parents know about map testing. Okay, no problem. Now, my question is, if we are being asked to plan ahead, why are you all not planning ahead for similar situations? Why am I getting a phone call the night before about adding students? That's 56 students that I will be responsible for in grades. Now, that's not being wise in planning. I asked our admin, what would happen if myself or my partner teacher couldn't be on campus one day over several days? The response was, whoever was physically here would be picking up 3 classes. That's 54 kids, and we would be responsible for their grades. So where is the transparency? Why are we walking into campus without proper PPE, no plexiglass face mask, face shield, Clorox wipes, and the off-brand Lysol? Why? Why do admins not know what we're missing? Why is the district not adapting to this pandemic and not planning ahead? Why do we still have kids without technology? Why can't we get the flexibility to work from home and continue teaching? Some of us have pre-existing conditions, and some of us just plain out don't feel safe. So why is the district not adapting or being flexible? We are adapting, and we are trying to be flexible. But it is your turn to be flexible with us. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes our speakers.
Thank you to all of our speakers this evening. We're going to move on to Section 6, which is the approval of minutes. 6.01, consider and take possible action to approve the minutes submitted for approval. Trustees, we have a motion.
Move to approve. Second.
We're approving call board meeting August 13, 2020, the call board meeting August 13, 2020, the audit committee meeting August 12, 2020, the call board meeting August 6, 2020, and the call board meeting July 23, 2020. Motion was made by Trustee Flores and seconded by Trustee Marshall. Excuse me. If there's no corrections, trustees, will you please cast your votes? We'll start with the folks that are joining the meeting virtually. So Trustee Johnson and Trustee Solis.
Yes.
Trustee Johnson.
Solis, yes.
Trustee Solis votes yes. Trustees, please cast your votes if you haven't already.
The motion passes 9-0.
Thank you, trustees. We're moving on to item 7.01, approve the 87th legislative agenda and proposed priorities. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve. Second.
Motion by Trustee Flores, second by Trustee Marshall. Dr. Hinojosa.
Yes, I'll be very brief. The results are in. I'm going to walk over to the chart. 2 of the items did not get much support, so those will be dropped off. 3 of them rose to the top. I will read those out when I get to the chart. And then the other 5 are clumped very close together. So I'm going to read what they are, and then I'm going to make a recommendation for your consideration. Okay, I got the votes here. The 2 that dropped to the bottom, the top 3 were Protect House Bill 3, sustain funding for Operation Connectivity, and full funding for pre-K. Those 3 are significantly separated from the rest. The 2 at the bottom, since not everything can be a priority, are full funding for the basic allotment and inflationary index for the basic allotment. And then the others are very all close to each other. And what you cannot see is on the board, it had multiple trustees and senior staff members that actually voted. As many as 8 or 10 people voted for these other items. So what my recommendation, certainly the board can do what you want, is our legislative priorities are the first 3. And then I suggest that the next 5 that are clumped so closely together would be secondary priorities, and we can just list them as that. So that's my recommendation to the board, that the top 3 are the priorities, and then the next 5 are secondary priorities, and that's my recommendation for your consideration.
Thank you, Dr. Hinojosa. Trustees, is there discussion? Well, I don't see any problem with that. I guess we can vote on the first 3 being the first priority, and then the next 5, you said? 1, 2. Next 5 being the second priority. Trustees, will you please cast your votes, starting with Solis and Johnson?
Solis votes yes.
Trustee Johnson?
Trustee Johnson votes yes.
Trustees, cast your votes. Please cast your votes.
The motion passes 8 voting yes and 1 abstaining.
Thank you, trustees. You've adopted the motion approving the 87th legislative agenda and proposed priorities. We're moving on to agenda item 7.02. Approve the resolution of the Board of Trustees of Dallas Independent School District waiving local policy mandates not associated with state or federal mandates. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve. Second.
Motion by Trustee Flores, second by Trustee Marshall. Trustees, is there discussion? Trustee Mackey, followed by Marshall.
No, I don't have.
No, just Trustee Mackey.
I appreciated the clarification from the briefing that showed all of the policies and the specific areas highlighted. Are the areas highlighted, most of them, I think 6 out of the 8 were, it just says 6 weeks, so we're moving to 9 weeks because that's what's in our board approved calendar. And there were a couple differences just based on how COVID is with, doing some of the math and whatnot. Are those the sum total of those pieces of these policies being waived, or are there other aspects of those policies that may be waived or changed?
No, only the highlighted language in the details sheet is the only language we're asking that you waive, which is the 6 weeks reference language and also the language that was in the COVID-related policies, the highlighted version.
Okay, so those 8 areas or whatever they were that were highlighted are the only things being changed?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Mackey. Trustees, please cast your vote, starting with Trustee Solis and then Trustee Johnson.
Yes. From Solis.
Trustee Johnson, yes.
Okay, trustees, please cast your votes if you haven't already.
Trustee Mitchell.
Yes, I vote yes. I think it just registered.
The motion passes 9-0.
Thank you, trustees. You've adopted the motion approving the resolution of the Board of Trustees of DISD waiving local policy mandates not associated with state or federal mandates. We're now moving to the excuse me. We're now moving to the consent agenda items, which would be consent agenda items 8.01 through 8.33 as amended. The following agenda items have been pulled for a separate vote. That's 8.06, 8.08, 8.09, 8.12, 8.14, 8.15, 8.18, 8.31, and 8.32 as amended. Do I have a motion on the consent agenda as amended?
Move to approve. Second.
Motion made by Trustee Flores, second by Trustee Marshall. Trustees, will you please cast your votes?
Trustee Johnson, yes.
Trustee Solis, yes.
Thank you, trustees.